Hi, everyone. Today we're going to present on gender-based algorithmic bias and ethics. And our group is Julia, Ryan, Jasmine, and Isabella. So there are a lot of expectations that algorithms can be unbiased to offset a lot of the learned biases in play in human decision-making. These algorithms can be used in life-altering processes such as resume screening, real estate, insurance, and credit card approval, and sentencing and parole decisions. Machine learning algorithms are trained on and learn from lots of data. However, these data sets may not always be objective and can often contain biases that are hidden within a corporate black box. A 2017 study from Princeton found that AI trained via open access to the internet develops human-like biases against groups like women and Black people. Algorithms can also be biased by the people who code them and evaluate them on whether they are accurate, ethical, and unbiased enough to be used in practice. Additionally, it's nearly impossible to give an objective answer on how to create a fair system for incredibly nuanced social issues. Technology can be accurate, but that isn't synonymous with being ethical or fair. The tech and AI field specifically have been historically dominated by men and still continue to be. In 2018, only 12% of machine learning researchers were women. The lack of female representation combined with an unfriendly to outsiders tech bro culture can lead to an absence of consideration of a gendered perspective for tools that are reshaping our world. There have been movements pushing for policy to prevent gendered AI bias, but this is largely still an unlegislated topic. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has still looked at several cases involving algorithmic discrimination, and they launched an initiative at the end of last year to ensure that artificial intelligence and other tools used in hiring and employment decisions comply with federal civil rights laws that the agency enforces.
One example of gender-based algorithmic bias is the Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs. In 2019, allegations of algorithmic bias were brought against Goldman Sachs and Apple due to the way that their algorithm was making credit decisions for the new Apple Card. When software developer David Heinemeier Hansen and his wife Jamie Hansen applied for Apple Cards, they were surprised when David's credit line was 20 times larger than Jamie's, despite the fact that Jamie had a better credit score and was a seemingly better applicant for the card. The only apparent difference between Jamie and David was their gender. And as David and Jamie continuously tried to challenge and understand the decision made by the algorithm, they were repeatedly met with the same response from Goldman Sachs employees that we don't know why the algorithm made the decision that it made, and there's nothing that we can do to change it. Eventually, Jamie's credit limit was manually changed to equal David's, but the solution ultimately failed to address the root of the problem. This highlights one of the struggles with fixing the bias of algorithms. The current solution to instances of discrimination and systematic bias is to manually change the outcomes for people who complain, and this solution in itself is a problem because it does not attempt to fix the algorithm's fundamental flaws. And another problem raised by this technology is the lack of transparency and explainability. Even Goldman Sachs employees have no idea how this algorithm works or why it makes certain decisions that it makes. And they don't know the inputs or the outputs or the algorithm itself. And because there's no way to argue with or reason with a computer, the decisions are blindly accepted, and they refuse to believe that the algorithm could be making sexist decisions.
Another example of gender biases in algorithms comes from Google search. When a user types in a certain search keyword into Google, Google's goal is to surface the most relevant images, in this case, to that keyword. However, when the phrase CEO United States was searched up, it returned predominantly male results. On the other hand, if the phrase woman was searched up, the auto-suggest feature would suggest phrases like beautiful and attractive, subconsciously objectifying women. On the other hand, similar biases also exist within Google Translate, where a lot of English phrases, when translated into languages that have both masculine and feminine forms of a word, predominantly use the male form, especially for predominantly male-driven occupations like doctors and presidents, while predominantly feminine professions will mostly be translated into the feminine form. However, Google Translate is actively working against this issue and creating gender-specific translations for languages that have gendered words. For example, Spanish. As a result, and in this case, the phrase "my friend is a doctor" is translated into both English, into both the masculine and the feminine form. Google is continuously working on their AI models to improve, to try to reduce the amount of gender biases. And they have released a number of open data sets based on translated Wikipedia pages to help resolve this issue, so that to reduce the amount of gender biases in all of their products.
In order to minimize the effects of gender bias in AI systems, we have proposed various solutions. The first is to change who is being represented on AI building teams. Inclusion of various minority gender groups can ensure that everyone can speak for themselves. The second solution is to have more structure and to govern closely on how AI systems create these biases. Biases are more likely to be caught by creating equity and diversity policies and having a gender-sensitive establishment. The third solution is for AI industries to encourage their developers to create AI that will take account for any unfair treatments or social discrimination that gender minorities face in real life to more justly determine data. And lastly, we should evaluate our society's morals and our own real-world biases. As stated before, AI systems learn to make skewed decisions by their developers. Continuing to fight for justice and equity will break down these social constructs for a better world. And to conclude our presentation, we know that AI systems have a long way to go before they even remotely represent gender minorities in a fair and just way. Our solutions are not exhaustive, but they are the right step in the right direction so we can all have a better future.